and we're Starbucks and Jersey Mike's in that area.
Right.
I'll turn it over to Jill.
Yes. So, right off Woodstock Commons Drive, there's two parties, TAP LLC and Munoz, and they are requesting, dedicating the sewer line and sewer easement to the town of Woodstock. And then HAF Real Estate One LLC is adjacent party to the property. And this formalizes what would normally be in place where, the town would be accepting properties such as HAF's real estate, sewer, once they have the multifamily stacked homes or whatever build out they've had there and the hookups are complete. And that would just be also formalizing that in the application. There's a recommendation in there that renders the town harmless in the event maintenance downstream is performed, because there's a private section through HAF at this time. Our attorney took a look through that and had no problems with it, and it's gone through the different parties. The recent amendment, was not reviewed by HAF, that included a proposed private easement, but other than that, HAF approved it up to that point, they just didn't have time to get back to us, they said. So staff is just wondering if you have any questions. Let's pull some conceptual designs up. I didn't have it on this one, okay, I can go get one.
I'll pull it up in this other document you shared with me.
I apologize.
Good for
Mr.
reading.
Tisdale.
I'm sorry. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, is that the same group that we already approved for them to build, right? The multi-level,
It's not, that's HAF, so that would be
Okay.
next to it. This is a section, and I, accidentally gave Aaron the wrong, slide deck.
Should they have any trouble with the private easement? I mean, like, should they come back and say
So,
they have any
There's one,
difficulty with it?
Mr. Berner and I talked with, the engineers from TAP, and there's a proposed request for a drop inlet, to bring it up to our design manual, specs on manhole number 3, is that right, Josh?
That's correct, yes ma'am.
And then, once there's a final inspection, then, the town would be accepting it if council so approved. Did you have any other comments to add on that, Josh?
Basically just an inside drop is, I say this is 3 or 4 foot manhole, comes out, sewage hits, creates a mess. So the inside drop, they mount it inside of the manhole and just comes straight down. It makes a nice smooth transition for the sewage to keep flowing. Also has a place at the top you can sewer jet from if it would become clogged.
So we're requesting those improvements be part of the condition of the acceptance. And, let's see, manhole number 3, this is the sewer line right here. That's manhole 3 right there. Then it goes off-site over to HAF, and here's Woodstock Commons right here. So it would just be in this section, and then it would go back to HAF, and then once HAF improved their site, then that would be, when they have all the hookups and they're approved by Public Works, then that would be accepted by the town.
And so this is the plan exhibit that's in your materials here, and so you can see on the original subdivision, it was conceived as a private sanitary sewer easement, and so it's, you can see this is kind of the edge of the Starbucks site going to the north, and then traverses through the 3 parcels here owned by TAP and Munoz over to the HAF site. And so basically this is taking what's a current private line, bringing that into public service. And the reason that there's the additional language that Ms. Jefferson had highlighted within the deed of dedication is because it goes into a private system on the HAF property, because that has not been conveyed because that property has not been fully developed yet. And so that we anticipate that will come into public service down the line, and so that's why that maintenance language is in the easement. And so it's a little messy, but we're just trying to clean up and take things into proper public service.
So be private and private. So with the termini there, it was allowing the town to do maintenance in that section.
This one's a little bit more confusing. People have any questions about that one?
Is that why they didn't have their, is that why they weren't ready to agree to that, cause they had to think about that too? I don't understand.
No, HAF was fine
Oh, I'm
with
sorry.
that.
Okay.
I'm Daniel with Balzer. Do you mind?
Oh, okay, no, I wasn't sure, okay.
That's all good. It's all good.
So he's with,
I'm with Balzer. I'm the guy that
Okay.
drew the plat.
Okay, cool.
Maybe learn a little bit of insight on this. So, not too long ago, this was all one parcel or a couple pieces, but basically the Starbucks got developed, and at the time, this was a private line. It's been built. It's been in place for a couple years now, at least, since the Starbucks got built. Obviously, this goes into this HAF parcel, and then just, I guess that's north is a set of townhomes that actually is a public line. Okay, so the reason to make it private to start with was because it's a private line going into a private line. Was the concept not that long ago? This plat's only from March of this year, but basically, so Munoz came in and bought lot 1, and that's gonna potentially be developed hopefully soon. And then we're working with the engineers and the owners for lot 2, or the potential owners for lot 2, and they basically came back with, well, their ownership, and I think even their attorneys came back and said, we're not comfortable with a private sanitary sewer system. Who's going to maintain it, this, that, and the other. And that's sort of what's prompted this whole public ask to start with. I do recognize it's a little quirky to have a public line going into a private line, but I think we've sort of worked out a lot of the kinks in the language with the attorneys and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, manhole 3 is, I believe, here.
it's on the other one, you can see.
And then 2, 1, and that was actually manhole 0 because it was an existing one before we even started the project at all. But essentially, the Starbucks and all that, it's got a little bit of an internal sewage system where the different parts all come together, and it's a clean out here that runs into manhole number 3. Basically, anything upstream is going to be Starbucks' responsibility because they're the end user essentially, and there's really no place to go after that because you're hitting Route 42. So really, the ask is to serve these parcels here with the sewer line. I hope that made sense. Still see some puzzled faces.
It's clearer than it was. I was like, what are we doing? I was really
Right.
confused by what was being said.
Oh.
Right, and then Josh looks over at me, cause he knows I'm the one that would,
Yeah.
like,
Ultimately, the original concept, from the start, would be for this to be a public line all the way down. Especially once you get, is that townhomes coming in online or apartment complex or something from HAF? Again, that was sort of,
We don't know.
if you go back to sort of their preliminary stuff, though, I think it was a residential development, let's call it.
Yeah, sure.
And for that line to be taken into the public at some point in the future. And I think where it's just sort of weird because we're upstream of that and asking for the same thing. Again, a little bit jumping the gun, but it really revolves around the potential owner of lot 2 and their attorneys going, we can't deal with this with private. So that's kind of the precursor of these months of meetings that we've had.
I'm glad that you chimed in with that. Josh and I spoke with him for a while, and Public Works has also cambered the line and inspected it, and that's when they found that they wanted the drop inlet to be brought up to the design specs in our manual.
And we've had those conversations with the folks at TAP. They're on board with it. It has not been done yet. In fact, our engineer within the last week sort of sent them, here's what that looks like, and it literally is plopping on there. But it's just all it does is really make the flow a little bit less messy, let's say. But they are completely on board with getting that done. It's just a matter of getting somebody to come out and do it.
Right, cause there's like 2 pipes, and there's a distance.
About a 3 foot, give or take.
And then the drop inlet is almost like a chute, and it just has the flow for the
Right.
wastewater to go through that rather than into the overall manhole, and then by gravity.
As
go
opposed to
the
more of a waterfall, if you will. situation.
And it's just easier
It's a
for
funnel.
maintenance and
Exactly.
it's in the spec manual. It's not unheard of to have those on private areas, it's just not at town level.
What did somebody say and you said exactly? That might help me.
Is lot 2? Okay.
Somebody said something and you said exactly.
Oh,
What?
I don't know, but it must have been very clever. That's-
No, I said it's like a funnel, and he said
Yeah, oh,
exactly.
yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I'm smart, Alicia.
I know. I know, you always contribute good stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm a contributor.
So the question that we
Contributor.
have for the Water and Sewer Committee is, are you interested in furthering this, public acceptance of this, this easement and infrastructure within the easement?
Is there a downside?
We've worked through, the potential downside is it's unusual that we would have a public main that runs into a private main that runs back into a public main. And so we've worked with, Mr. Neal on, language within the draft deed of dedication language here, that we feel that, that covers, any potential negatives that may come up with that in terms of maintenance responsibility. So, so Mr. Neal is comfortable with the language, that's in the deed of dedication here, and so if we feel like we have protected the town's interest, if you're interested in taking, bringing this into the public system.
Well, because in essence, at some point in the future, half will need to come on board whenever they decide what they're doing.
That's what we anticipate is as that development occurs with the HAF, site there to the north, that they will be, bringing that line into the public system and then closing that gap.
Once they have their hookups.
And to quell any concerns, that is the process they went through when they did their first section. The first section, because it's at the beginning end, I believe is already in the public system.
Right.
So there, I mean, it would.
You're saying at 0.
Even no, well, not at 0. 0's just the end of theirs. I'm talking about the property that would be
I see.
about twice that distance down. It's where there's 20-ish
Hodgkiss.
townhouse
Yeah.
units right now.
That's where they
But that's where this line ultimately goes,
okay.
and that line's been dedicated to the town. There'd be no reason whatsoever for them to not dedicate the middle part once they develop it. I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't, right?
That was part of the overall plan. It's just, not to accept it until the hookups were complete.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Alright, so I just need someone to recommend it come to the council.
I always forget if I'm on or not.
I don't think you're water and sewer.
No, I'm ordinance.
No, Frank is, I think.
After how many years should I know?
Frank's
Go ahead,
in
Frank, take it
Frank's
away.
in
I recommend or deny. I recommend that they,
We'll recommend.
proceed with that.
Okay, I'll second it. myself.
Dedication. With those conditions?
With those conditions.
Those conditions.
Alright. Anything else from water and sewer?
If you want to, I'd be glad to give an update about the water restrictions that went into place
Yeah.
last week. So we had some discussions last week, about, the current river levels and flow rates. And so ultimately, I realized that, we need to, move into mandatory water conservation measures in line with our town code. And so, that went into place effective on Friday, and so we've, begun public outreach associated with that. Through the news media, through our social media. We have a postcard mailer that's going out to all of our utility accounts. And so just trying to make sure that we're covering our bases on all the different ways that people receive news from the town's perspective, that these restrictions are in place. We're also trying to encourage additional just voluntary measures based off best practices. What are some small actions that people can do, either in the home or in their business that can, collectively help reduce the amount of water that we're consuming within our system. When we had checked last week, the river's flow rates were below the 5th percentile of typical flow rates for this time of year, which is very, very low. And so that's kind of the short basis of the water restrictions that we're in. we're trying to set the right example from an organizational perspective in terms of evaluating our water consumption, in terms of some of our practices. And so we've elected to make some changes in terms of some of our current efforts, whether that's there's some of our landscape watering, delaying our hydrant flushing program. We decided ultimately to close the pool a week early and cease the filling operations that we would need to do there. We're down to our last week, and attendance typically drops this time of year, and with the cooler temperatures, just thought that would be appropriate. And then on the positive side, that closing the pool allowed for us to utilize that pool water to further our court resurfacing project that's happening starting today up at W. Riley Park. And so, so there was a positive opportunity for us to be able to recycle water that otherwise would have evaporated, and put that to productive use for that capital project.
It was an ingenious idea.
So,
Thank you.
Josh or Michelle, is there anything further in terms of our conversations on water conservation?
No, I would ask or request for those of you that are on social media, that are connected and with the community, please share our posts. I just got a text that WHSV did come down and cover the reuse of the pool water today, so I'll post that on our social media, and I'd love for you to share it. We're really trying to frame this in a positive light and let folks, ask them to voluntarily step up and conserve water at their homes, and just, do the rain dance.
Yeah.
I think we missed it today.
Yeah.
Anything else?
So does anybody have any questions about where we are with that, or impacts, or what we could be doing as an organization?
I guess,
Since we're
my
together.
question would be, where are we on the well situation?
So,
Good follow-up.
yeah, we're still a ways from having a solution there. So, we had some conversations with a third-party group called Moonshot Missions, who was doing some consulting with us on that, and so we need to re-engage with them and get the latest update as to where that project is. But that's still something that's a forefront priority for us in terms of adding some redundancy to our system. And I know it's a council priority that we talked about as well, whether it's from the water supply side of the river, or just from a redundancy standpoint. If we run into contamination or an HAV issue in the river, that we need to be adding that redundancy to our system.
How are things out at the dam? Water level and stuff, I guess, is that down low too?
I'm not sure if it's really been affected that much in terms of how much it's impounding.
That would be the thing, but. Alright, anything else for water and sewer guys? Yes, Alright, I turn over to Mrs.
Alright.
Fire.
All right, I will call the Finance Committee meeting to order. We have two items to discuss tonight. The